Hello, my name is Rebecca Doherty. I'm an educational psychologist, and I'm just going to talk a little bit about mediated self-talk. So using our own self-talk to support cognitive development and language development of little people. It's something that people will be doing naturally a lot of the time, but we're just going to clarify some of the elements of our own self-talk that we can use with young children so that we can maybe be doing some of the things that are really helpful a bit more of the time. So I'm just going to go ahead and screen share a PowerPoint. Okay. So mediated self-talk, helping language and cognitive development. This particular term is taken from Feuerstein and colleagues. If you want to have a little bit of a more in-depth look at this approach, this is a book that you can get from Amazon, a Think Aloud, Talk Aloud approach to building language that is really helpful and goes through things in a little bit more detail. Okay, so the sorts of things that we're going to be looking at when we're moderating our self-talk, using the way that we're just talking aloud as we're going about things to support the child's language and cognitive development. We're going to use modified language, so we're thinking just above the child's expressive level. So we're thinking, what can they do at the moment, using that as a starting point, and then using language that's just a little bit above that. It's good to have models of higher level language in the environment as well. Sometimes when we're thinking about language development, we might use the term we need a bit of a push and a pull. So a pull is like giving an example of language that is quite a bit further on. There's an example to increase familiarization, also pushing from the bottom as well by using language that's just a little bit in advance of the child's current stage. We're repeating and reinforcing keywords and phrases, emphasizing particular words, leaving pauses between what we say to allow the child to process, and increasing our facial expression and gesture to aid that understanding. Okay, so modeling language. We're modeling language that's just above the expressive level of the child. What sort of things are we going to think about? We might think about the length of utterance, that is, how long our mini sentences are. If the child is just using language at the one word level, we're probably going to be wanting to use language that's maybe at the 2 or 3 word level, so that we're sort of taking where they're at and just giving them a model of this is where you can go to next. We might be adding in different types of words. So if the child is just using maybe nouns, just labeling things, we can add in some adjectives. So if they're saying car, we can say, yeah, a red car. Okay, so we're taking what they're doing and adding different types of words to it. We can model using questions and answers out loud, which is nice. So sometimes children can get a little bit demand resistant if we're asking them questions too much of the time. And also, they might not know the answer, which is difficult because then they're sort of in this uncomfortable, frustrated sort of state of mind. They don't know how to answer. So we can model saying the question and then answering it ourselves. What's the weather? It's sunny. So we're modeling the question and the answer. We might model also causal relationships, that is why things are happening. The concept of why is quite difficult for young children, so we can model using this sense of a causal relationship, why things happen, by saying, it's cold, so I'm putting my coat on. I'm putting my coat on because it's cold. Okay, so we're modeling that understanding. Okay, so let's just have a look at what that might look like in practice. So let's have a think. We've got some blocks here. So if the child is just at the stage of labeling them and saying block, maybe we're thinking, okay, that's what they're doing. They're labeling with using a one-word noun. So we're just going to take that a little bit further, and we're going to say, yeah, blue blocks. 2 blue blocks. They're blue. Blue blocks. Okay, so we're just taking where the child's at and then moving it a little bit further, adding in a different type of word, and repeating what we're saying to allow it to go in. As you can imagine, if you were trying to learn new vocabulary for a different language, just hearing it once is maybe gives a little bit of familiarization, but you want to hear it several times. Leave a little bit of a pause to allow it to sink in, and then repeat it again. Okay. Try and go back to screen sharing. Okay, so we've thought about the length of utterance, different types of words, questions and answers, causal relationships. Yeah, so to clarify, we're going to be repeating and reinforcing the key language, both on in the moment. So yes, blue blocks, they are. They're blue. They're blue blocks. Okay, these are blue. We're repeating it, leaving a little gap, and we're also revisiting it on subsequent days as well. New learning goes in really well if we sort of have it reinforced about every 24 hours. So if we're maybe noticing that certain languages are emerging, or the child is becoming familiar with certain vocabulary or types of phrases, it can be helpful to make a note of that so that we can revisit it again, maybe sharing those particular words and phrases with other adults working with them. So maybe between teachers and teaching assistants, and then also people in the family as well, so that we can get a load of reinforcement going there. We need a lot of reinforcement for new neural pathways to be formed in our brain. And if we're seeing some challenges with development in terms of cognitive and language development, it's a reasonable assumption that maybe more reinforcement and repetition is going to be necessary to really get things to link up. Okay, emphasizing. It's okay to sort of place a little bit more emphasis and expression into what we're saying compared to what we might naturally do. We probably do this a little bit some of the time. People sometimes maybe feel a little bit silly doing it, but you know, we're working with young children or children with some challenges, so that's okay. It can help to really sort of slow down what we're saying, really place emphasis on the new words that we're trying to introduce. So yeah, they're blue. They're blue. Like that, we're putting a lot of emphasis on. We're exaggerating how we're enunciating the word so that it's really clear. We can use an interesting and varied tone and increase our use of facial expressions and gesture as well. So we've got a little picture of a cat here. So if we were describing this, using that slowing down, emphasizing, being a bit more storytellery in the way that we're talking, it might sound something like this. Cat's got a little nose, so small. It's a little nose and long whiskers. Here are the cat's whiskers. They're here. They're long whiskers and a little nose. Okay, so by using that gesture, that expression, slowing it down, emphasizing, repeating, it helps the child make sense a little bit more of what you're saying. And also, little children tend to quite like that sort of way of talking, so it can help them engage their attention a little bit longer. Okay, so we've got a picture here of a drawing, which is probably not done by a natural child, but if we were going to be talking about this, if we're modeling use of language, rather than asking them, okay, how many trees have we got? And then just waiting for the answer, we're modeling use of language. So we might say something like, oh, how many trees here? How many? We've got 1, 2, 3. 3 trees. How many trees have we got? We've got 3 trees and 3 clouds. How many clouds have we got? Let me count. 1, 2, 3. 3 clouds, 3 trees, and 3 clouds. and a nice shiny sun. A nice big sunshine. Okay, so that's a little bit of an example of using mediated self-talk in our interactions with children. We might feel silly at first, that's okay. So we're thinking about taking where they're at, bringing it a little bit further forward, using whatever's in the environment, their focus of attention, to just label what's happening, just describe what's happening. So it doesn't feel like we're doing explicit teaching necessarily. It doesn't feel like we're doing a learning task necessarily. We're just using ourselves, and we're using self-talk out loud to just describe what's happening in the environment. Okay, thank you very much.